So today I'm going to talk to you about energy storage and in our store, and started a little project back in March. Really thought about when I told Frank Blake that it was time for me to move on from Home Depot. I really wanted to take the time to reflect on what I wanted to do next. So I went around the world with my husband, 16 countries, about 10, 12 months. Developing countries, developed countries, saw three things that were really trends and needed big solutions: water, food, and energy. And so I looked at those three areas and really concluded that energy was a great opportunity. And I met up with David Patterson, who was someone I've known for years, who runs Northwater Capital, and it's probably the biggest venture capital company, one of the biggest in Canada today. And we started talking, and we started talking about trends. And we set up NR Store. And NR Store is owned by Northwater Capital, a limited fund, and our job is basically to accelerate the energy storage technologies. So let me just talk to you about the opportunity. We all know, everything we read, this sector is growing, renewable energy is growing by 40%. And when you see the growth in a place like Ontario, it's even higher. At 1,600 megawatts today to growing to 10,700 megawatts over the next 6 years. And this according to Ontario's long-term energy plan. That's 6 times an increase over a very short period of time. It includes solar, wind, and bio. And then we all know that there'll be no more coal energy past 2018, and quite frankly, it's really just used today almost as a peaker capability. But what does more renewables mean? What does that mean? It means more costs needed for firming. That intermittent energy that's coming on board is not steady, like nuclear and other thermal generating facilities are. There's more technologies needed to support this intermittent energy, and there's more natural gas peakers needed, and in terms of baseload generation, that will continue to grow. So it's really interesting to see what's happening in Ontario today. And we feel energy storage is the missing link. It's a missing link for a number of things. The renewable energy area is very exciting, great opportunity, but there's not been enough work to receive that renewable energy on the grids today in the world. And it's all around the world. This is a world opportunity. This is not just here in Ontario. Oops, I was late with this, sorry. That wasn't up. But basically those are my points a little bit earlier. So let's talk about surplus baseload generation in Ontario, SBG. Look, surplus baseload generation results from low demand. It results from uninterruptible nuclear baseload production, and it results from an increase in wind and solar penetration on the grid. IESO has been forced to increase SBG forecasts because nuclear energy is hard to adjust. It takes several days to ramp up and ramp down. There's been relatively flat demand. We all read about the economic situation, the economic environment. Conservation efforts are going, and they're progressive in terms of our province. And there's a slowing of manufacturing. It's partially impacted by an impact in population, but quite frankly, the demand is relatively flat. And when you take a look at this graph, when the green drops below the red line, you have surplus baseload generation. So you see those two big cavities there. That is basically the spring and the fall. And that indicates that white space between the green and red lines is about 2,000 megawatts. That's a lot of energy that is being produced without demand. So, you know, IESO likely will be forced to curtail low-cost dispatchable resources in order to manage this. And they state in their most recent September 18-month outlook, with wind and solar becoming more prominent resources on the electricity grid, the need for maximum flexibility from all resources becomes integral for the reliable and efficient operation of the grid. So, who's NR Store? NR Store has been established, let's get my notes here. Established again, it's a Northwater Capital Company. We're funded by one of the largest venture capital companies in Canada. We are in the business of accelerating grid-scale energy storage projects. We are in the business of educating stakeholders on the advantages of energy storage and large-scale energy storage. We are in the business of really taking a look at two areas: frequency regulation and load shifting. Those are the two areas that NR Store are really focused on. And we're associated with a couple of great companies that I'll talk about in a minute. We are looking for the most cost-effective and efficient energy storage technologies. You know, lots of talk about the economics of these technologies. And, you know, I think I have a reputation of understanding economics and profitability. And these technologies can't go forward unless they are profitable and they make sense for the overall improvement in terms of grid requirements. We're in the business of obtaining also long-term power purchase agreements and also looking for non-discriminatory market rules for energy storage. Today, the market rules don't, you know, basically it's a double count in terms of cost, the way the market rules are written for storage, so that has got to change. We are also in the business of engineering, procuring, and construction contracts. We can't do this alone. Today, Alexander, who's here, and I, and a few others, manage a lot of engineering people, modeling people, financial people, in the design and the development of the projects that we're working on. And with that, we'll develop project financing and move on to construction and commissioning. Aggressive, but I think you have to be, given the time and the opportunity in this environment. So where does NR Store fit in terms of where we are? As you can see, we are not in the fundamental research area, applied research, technology development. We are taking those technologies that have gone past those areas, that are in the product commercialization stage, because we want to work with them in terms of market entry. That's where we've positioned ourselves. That's the focus that we've made. We're partnering with companies where we like late stage demonstration. That's where we are in terms of the companies that we're working with. And in our stores, you know, one of our raison d'etre is to reduce the risks to these technologies. We want to help them get to market. And I'll tell you, some of these technology companies are working so hard to get their technology focused and to a state where it's commercial. They don't have the time to build the thinking, the assessment, the infrastructure, the partnering to do all of what's needed. So NR Store is playing that role. And we are, you know, as Peter pointed out, we're looking for first mover advantage. No one has really conquered this area. Pumped water, there's no question that pumped hydro is an area where energy storage, there's some of that out there, but in terms of large grid energy storage, we want to be the first mover in. And we are a vehicle for commercialization of this technology. So I think this grid is very interesting because on the top, we're showing the technology. So uninterruptible power, supply quality, the first third of that grid. Transmission and distribution grid support, load shifting in the middle. And then bulk power management. And you see high power at one corner and high energy on the other. And it shows the technologies that are in there. So we're focused on two technologies. Temporal is a flywheel technology, great Canadian-based, Mississauga-based company. We've got Murray Stewart, the chair, here with us today. Temporal provides storage for minutes as opposed to hours. Temporal focuses on frequency regulation. That's where our focus is with them. The range of power it can store is 1 megawatt to multi-megawatt projects. And as you can see, and as I'll tell you, temporal power is very close to commercialization. General compression is a compressed air energy storage technology. It provides storage for hours. It's bulk power management, and it's anywhere from 100 megawatts up to thousands of megawatts. It is scalable. You see supercapacitors, batteries, there's all kinds of technologies out there. There's an enormous amount happening in storage. The world is focused on this. Just listening to the announcements recently in Japan where they have decided not to go forward with their nuclear program. Wow, how are they going to make this transition? And I think without storage will make it a heck of a lot easier in terms, because they're going to have to be doing a lot of renewable energy. Who's going to store that energy? And it'll be a project by NR Store, don't you worry. A little bit more about general compression. And I'll point out again, Northwater Capital is an investor in general compression, along with Phillips Conoco, Duke Energy. It is a Boston-based company, and it is developed a very exciting technology. It has developed a near isothermal compressed air energy storage technology. There's air compression technology out there that's fueled by natural gas. This has no fossil fuels. It uses water. It heats and cools water to manage the air compression. The round-trip efficiency is competitive with pumped hydro. NR Store is working with general compression to develop large projects, and we're going big. We're looking at a 2,000 megawatt project for Ontario. And when we make that happen, we can do this around the world. The market is enormous. So today NR Store with general compression is working with all the stakeholders. All we're talking to, and we're doing a lot of analysis, financial modeling, system modeling, all kinds of work to prove out this technology, to prove it is economical. Because again, we are a solution for the intermittent supply that is increasingly going on the grids around the world of renewable energy. And we're building the case that Ontario particularly needs this. Let's talk now about temporal power, flywheel technology. As I mentioned earlier, Murray Stewart is here, he's chair. And by the way, just in terms of general compression, what we've done there is that we have the rights for all of Canada in terms of the development, the agreement that we have. Temporal Power is another great Canadian company. It's quite amazing in terms of its development of its flywheel technology. Again, flywheel technology will be used for frequency regulation applications. They're a great Canadian company, very fast, impressive speed of development in terms of the flywheel technology. So a little background. Flywheel is a device that stores electricity for short periods of time. It works by combining a motor generator with a large steel mass. The accelerating masses uses momentum to generate electricity on demand. And think of it as a kinetic battery. It can provide storage in a range of minutes. And it can discharge and charge within seconds. And it can store energy for hours with almost no parasitic losses. As seen in the graph, after 10 hours, there's only a 5% loss, which is quite amazing. And the low losses, that's what's different in Temporal Power's technology. The low losses are due to its proprietary technology developed here in Ontario. They have high efficiency, around 85%. The Temporal technology is scalable, up to tens of megawatts. They are also in the final stages of demonstration projects. And we're partnering with Temporal Power. And we're looking at various applications and various geographies in terms of working with them. You know, in the U.S., the new FERC legislation that really puts storage more on a level playing field than we have in the rest of North America is a place where we see there's a big opportunity. So, to sum up, we need to change. We need to be brave. We need to recognize that we can't continue to go on the way we're going. We need to improve grid security and reliability. It's going to get progressively difficult. We need to enable greater penetration of renewables on the grid. It's coming. And like anything, when it's not smooth sailing, when the wind comes in the evening and there's no one to take that energy, it's a very difficult process for the grid to absorb that intermittent energy. And it's hard on its assets and, quite frankly, deteriorates its assets faster. Storage also makes the system more efficient by improving on-demand capacity. If I didn't have the product on the shelf when the customer came to get it, I lost a sale. Same thing here. Exactly the same analogy. We're losing sales. We can't export this product because we're getting it at the same time no one else needs it. Can you imagine storing it and selling at a premium to an export market? The other thing that storage does, it defers and replaces expensive large-scale projects and transmission and distribution upgrades. Why not take all of that renewable energy and add value to it and use it more effectively? And it is a way better alternative to paying generators not to produce, which we are today. And it also moderates the increases in the global adjustment charges. And you know, the thing that I've learned all of my life and all of my business career, You got to take care of the customers. We need to control the cost to the ratepayers in our province and to our industry, to grow our industry. And I'll tell you, large-scale storage is a billion-dollar opportunity that will greatly benefit Ontario, Canada, and the world. And we are going for it. Thank you very much.